Yeah. You've been on the radar for a little bit, though, as far as that goes.
Yeah.
Whether you knew it or not.
Sometimes you might need a beans for that, so
Will this click?
you're gonna send it to the hardback request. I'll just send an email.
Or will this break things if it?
Okay. Alright. Yeah, it's just a little snippet of code. They can pick where they want. Yeah. Meanwhile, send me the code.
You got it.
I'll be able to share that.
Okay.
I'm trying to share it with not me, I'll just be a couple of us who are trying to do it. Sentimental.
I guess I can. I've done it too.
I'm going to give this to Fernando. This is Fernando's stuff, I imagine.
Still working.
Thank you. I will. I will. What I really need is just the house facility center to hook the thing up. Do they have a machine? Yeah. All right, I'm gonna tell them that was a.
Yeah, because, well, they're excited because they want on a soil sensor.
Yeah.
And tie in our watering system to it. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I'll drop some names and I might ask you about the technology.
Yeah, glad to help.
For those of you who are coming in, there's snacks, coffee, hot water for tea and chocolate, hot chocolate. So if you so desire, it's here for you. I'll heat up the hot water just to be safe.
Once we get here, we might be good in like three big tables, but
And then if anybody wants, I do have stacks of just general LC flyers if you wanted to hand them out to classes. I've got a couple stacks of those. You're welcome to take those. Just a pack of 20 or something. And if you want more than that, let me know. There's also the trifolds and things here. So we'll get started in just a couple minutes, I guess.
well, you know, I mean, been a Chandler Gilbert a long time, and it's kind of a understood 15-minute lag, it seems like. It's not been formally expressed, but go over there to the computer lab and kind of in the back there.
That's the easiest one, or closest one. Sorry for the fast turnaround. We do have the snackages that were here before if you didn't get a chance on them.
Good. Nah, those guys
Well,
are just
no-
having lunch,
Yeah.
so I thought we might sit at three tables. I don't think they are coming back. I think they had an honors thing to go to.
Yeah.
My memory's right.
Have it. They're there for it.
Let's just see what I have here. FYE looks like. Maria. Is this Maria? This might be for you. Just because it's got 101 and 102 in there, so as we do something later, you've got it handy. Most of that stuff that's in the Canvas shell, so I just made copies. You're welcome.
And this is
Oh.
should work.
Huh. Wow. Amazing.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, in the sense that like I was probably in every one of those seats after you left, but only in that sense.
And I do have more bottled waters if you guys need it, but I'll put a couple over here just for easy access. Sorry. So I know David gave everybody a packet, and we'll get started in a couple minutes. We're just, according to David, following CGC culture of time. But if you want somewhere to get started, one of the first things on our list is to just take a glance at the statement on integrative learning. It's just the one pager. Theoretically, it's near the front, but a conversation on that will be a starting place.
Thank you.
And thank you all for being here and for being willing to explore learning communities with us.
Hey.
Happy Friday.
I know her. Thank you.
Howdy and hello. Find your happy place.
Thank you so much.
This is for you. Hey, Bethany, David. How are you? Nice to meet you. I got something for you.
So, a couple things for those of you who just came in. We do have bagels, snacks, tea, coffee, hot chocolate. Also, if you wanted to take some of the materials for your class, I've got a couple packs of 20 flyers, just general learning communities flyers, or a couple trifolds. You're welcome to do that. I'll also send out an email here in the next week, more than likely, that with some of these marketing materials and the list of all the known LCs for summer and fall. If you would share those with your classes too, that's always a great thing to do. Are we waiting? We about there?
Yeah, I mean, I know that Alyssa can't make it because of her sabbatical.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, that maybe Miriam, who was online with us during the committee meeting, may not be coming to join us, and I would understand that. I don't know if we're missing anybody else. Anybody here without a partner? I feel like
I don't know partner either.
we'll find you one, Chris. We'll find you one. We'll find you one. All right, so yeah, we should get started because, we're working for 2 hours, 2 hours of Chandler Gilbert time as far as that goes. So we'll get 2 hours out today. We'll come back. I have another session. April 18th, I think, is the date for that. And then we'll meet that Wednesday and Thursday after graduation, right, to finish up and do a little more work there. But we want to get started for the sake of that. And I've called it LC Faculty Training Series. They used to be the LC Summer Institute, but since we're not doing it in the summer completely, Summer Institute seemed inaccurate. I'll apologize because I think that many years ago someone told me that we should never call anything with faculty training because faculty hate the idea that someone else is going to train them in something that they've already been trained in. So I apologize. That was a rush to get something on a calendar somewhere. Maybe I'll rethink that for the next time that we do it. But I thought it'd be worth it to do some introductions, primarily because we have some faculty that are joining us really for the first time in terms of learning communities. That includes some brand new residential faculty as well as some adjunct faculty. So just having some introductions I think would be useful. We'll ask you to do a name, a discipline, maybe your experience with LCs, which might be minimal in some cases, and that's fine. And then maybe the LC that you're planning to teach this semester. And then maybe we'll start with the dean, actually, if he's willing to do it, because I know he's got limited time with us today.
So if I can do it, you can do it. You get the most out of teaching with your teaching partner. I've taught with 5 different teaching partners. You know, 6 different learning communities. Some of them the most would be about 3 times in a row. And it's the most powerful experience of my teaching career, is working with somebody else. Really made me almost holding a mirror up to me what I was doing and develop throughout the whole process. So enriching and enjoyable. I'm really excited about your commitment to this. This is in a way, our third birth, our third golden age of learning communities. First being when we first started with a single faculty member, it was her passion. She sought out a grant. The national group got a national leader in learning communities, come to our college, visit, meet with faculty, and she went through this in training, and it took her a little while, and then we had about 3 or 4 learning communities for a while. They were really strong, incredible. And then mid-2010s, David, a group of faculty, and some staff, an advisor, went away to Evergreen for a learning community with the Washington Center for Excellence.
I think it was the National Summer Institute for Learning Communities.
Okay, for the Washington Center?
Yep.
For Evergreen. And when they came back really related to DevEd, the whole idea being that those students are most vulnerable and challenged. So, you know, a lot of learning communities related to a 1 credit, which would now be our FYE classes, but a 1 credit student success class, paired with classes, and other pairings. We got up to about 30 learning communities, which means we're packing, I don't know, close to 1,000 students with that pedagogy. And our data, thanks to David, the studies he's done over like a 10-year longitudinal study, shows usually increased class success, but always increased persistence. And then in some places, for some English classes, it's more success in the subsequent class. Because they feel like they belong. They feel like they know what they're doing, why they're here. What would be mine? I think we're finding, because that's the questions that we're asking on the CESI data as well, that showing that they have an increased sense of belonging when they're learning communities. And it's because of the work that you do. I can't overstate the appreciation, but also the awareness of how much work you do when you spend all that time. Like, I don't know, did you ever debate about a grade or an essay, for example, in your early days? You know, you get so caught up in what's going on with that one student who's going to help them the most, as well as your curriculum. So thank you. And I'm just lurking for about an hour here, and it's really good to meet you all.
LaCrissa. I'm Mary Ellen Ornberger. I've been at Chandler Gilbert I'm reading faculty, and I've been at Chandler Gilbert since December 2013. And I was given no choice. I was told, hey, you're going to be teaching this, and you're going to teach a learning community with Renee Root. And that's how my experience began. And Renee and I taught an 18-credit learning community sequence that we presented at multiple national conferences throughout the years. The pandemic kind of did us in, and things, shifted drastically in my life here. And being, most of you know me because I bug you about assessment. So I'm your assessment chair, your faculty assessment chair for like HLC accreditation and general education outcomes and course competencies and curriculum mapping and all of that. But I also started teaching first year experience 101 a couple of years ago. And as I've become familiar with that curriculum, Maria Rodriguez, who is second year composition faculty and I have been talking, and because 31 years of my education practice has always been in reading and writing, developmental education, we're going to try and do better supporting those students. We both have a lot of experience with it. Our teaching styles are similar. And we're going to try. Thank you, counseling faculty, to entrusting me with this pilot, because it's a big leap for them to do this. But we're going to try and stretch the FYE 101, which is typically 8 weeks, into like 10-ish, 11 weeks, and like umbrella it or support it somehow over that WAC 101 into English 101. So it's going to look a little different, and I'm not sure if it's going to work, but here goes.
I talked with enrollment services this morning to let them have a heads up that that was that the overlap was happening, so they at least know and are aware that that's a different experiment, but good for students.
It's 2 sections, and we're like alternating, and I'm going to be really flexible. Like if you want to be in this section, it doesn't matter. If you're in the morning, like we're just going to be very supportive and flexible with how to get the kids enrolled in the FYE 101s that are in Maria's WAC. So whoever's in Maria's WAC will be enrolled in my FYE 101s. So here goes, because that's the model they need, and that's not the model that it is at Chandler Gilbert right now. And I'm hoping to be the learning community ambassador for future FYE 101 LCs.
It's a nice place to maybe do some growth for sure. Well, maybe take it over to Erica and John.
Hello. Hi. It's great to see you too in a different capacity than I knew about this one. My name is Erika Acevedo Ontiveros, and I'm over at INCOM. I teach film and theater courses, and I have currently zero experience with LC community, so I'm extremely excited to venture out and try to do something with contemporary cinema and English.
Nice. Yep. We'll see.
And with that.
My name is John Dean, and I've had quite a bit of experience with LCs, teaching LCs since about 12. So quite a while, right? And 4 or 5 different partners. And I teach at LC now with Chris Wright in education and English 101. So I saw Erica in the hybrid.
Oh, yeah, hybrid summit.
Hybrid summit. So, and my film and lit class never makes, so I figured my English 102 makes, so maybe we could get some students to connect in that way. So,
Okay. Thanks, John.
Hi, I'm Greg. David and I are the 2 co-coordinators for learning communities here on campus. I have been engaged with learning communities since my very first semester teaching, when I was still in my master's program. They told me there was that my course had a cohort of nursing students, and that I should theme, if I wanted to, I could theme toward health. I didn't talk with the other instructor, but I had the students there, so I did. I've been teaching LCs here since 2016. My first 2 years I taught as adjunct faculty, mashing up with chemistry for English 101 and 102 and Chem 130. And so that was fun and exciting. Fan letters to famous scientists and whatnot, and obituary letters to famous scientists. We played kids' books about chemistry, that kind of thing. I've taught with chemistry, math, intro to business, CIS 105, the library research course, and multiple math courses at this point. So yeah, that's always exciting. If you can't tell, I do kind of geek out about this stuff. I do believe in it as a pedagogical innovation. And I think it's amazing for students, especially post-COVID, especially in a culture that is dealing with a legitimate loneliness epidemic. The power of having students build relationships with you and each other can't fully be expressed just by the data that says it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, next semester I'm teaching the math, and we're linking it. I've got 2 of those going, so I may have given you more than I was supposed to.
Hi everyone, my name is Fernando. I'm faculty in the psychology department. I've had experiences with LCs here at Chandler Gilbert for several years since I transferred from Glendale. I was teaching with Heather Horn, and I'll be teaching with Heather Horn 2.0.
That's a good. It's a strong compliment. Definitely.
Right, yeah.
At Glendale, I did teach a similar model to like the one that Mariana was describing. We used to have this FYE, Psych 101, English 101 model that worked really well. I really enjoyed that. I think it's a really nice way to make community, both as the faculty, but also for the students. And I think that that's where the persistence comes into the picture. I love doing it. I think it's great professional development. I think the students benefit from it. So I did say yes to learning community. Yes, I say yes.
Do you like the banner? It's new. It's new this year.
So I'm going to be teaching with Dr. Kate Polk, and she's going to be handling English 101. I'll be teaching in Psych 101, and our theme is going to be around wellness and well-being, and we're also going to be writing in nature. So I really love the idea that she has. So I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Enrollment Services says the psych writing one is one of the most asked for. That it's very popular.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
Bethany Hutchins. I'm in the history department, and I have no experience with LC teaching, so this will be interesting to learn. But it seems to be lots to learn.
Oh, I'm Frank. The gist of this came to me in a vision, not really, but for last semester for English 102, I had a theme, and the theme was connecting modern technology to the past. Guys like Edison, Tesla, whatever. So I got the idea that maybe that would be good to pair with a history class. So I spurned the idea of an LC with history. I think it's 104. Looking at the fact that everything we have probably didn't exist 150 years ago and came out of someone's mind or innovation, and so looking at that connection from past to now. No, actually, I had this vision while I was watching Dead and Company at the Sphere in Vegas. So it's just a dream.
Wow. I want to go there.
Yeah, right.
That show.
It's hard to follow having vision in front of like.
If anybody can do it, Julie, I think it's you.
Okay. Well, so this is my second semester full-time at Chandler Gilbert. Before I was at PD full-time, and we tried to get LCs to work there, and they did not make. It was very sad. So I was hoping to do one, didn't happen. I think it's going to make here. And have paired with Maria. I know I have to share Maria. We're gonna have to battle it. But Fernando was already doing the Psych 101, so we came up with an idea to actually Psych 132, which is a culture and psychology class, would be a good match with English 102. So trying something a little bit different and see how that goes.
You guys are in the spring, right?
In the spring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the fall, you're in the spring, but it's all good, so we can share.
Yeah.
There was a point, do you guys remember in college when you had to fill out a piece of paper to register?
Yeah.
There was a point where we actually brought students the paper to register for next semester. So you could think about that. So the equivalent that would be opening up some computers. And so for your psych and your English 101,
Yes.
you could just say, this is where you want to go next semester, which means credits.
Right, yeah.
The teachers can come in, introduce themselves.
Should do that.
It's beyond marketing so much. It's almost like you do want to register.
Yeah.
And it's surprisingly
Get it while it's hot.
It surprisingly worked for the English 101 and English 102 classes. There's something about that piece of paper as soon as they were kind of set.
Yeah. I will say with that in mind, and everybody should really be thinking about that. If you're someone teaching a 102 in the spring with a LC, you should be tapping into all those LCs with 101 in the fall and all those other colleagues you might know teaching 101 in the fall to try to pull those students over. Granted, part of the the pull used to be, and this is less the case now because of OER and all of us using kind of those kinds of textbooks. But you know, if you're someone that still uses a textbook, having the same textbook for 101 and 102 was an additional draw for those students to say, okay, there's an extra expense I don't have to put out. And so I know most of us have moved beyond that, but for those of us that haven't, that's a nice additional carrot for students to maybe go to the other classes. Like they don't have to get another textbook if you're a textbook user.
And I'll say the obvious, because you probably experienced this from your own teaching. When students follow you, that seeds the next community, right? So half of your students, they're going to know what learning community is.
That's how we
It's
built
such
off
a-
that 18 credit
Yeah.
sequence with all those developmental students, because they would just follow us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's powerful. It just grows. Their growth
Oh my
is
gosh.
exponential. What they're able
It's
to do.
remarkable.
Yeah, and what they can do for those other students that haven't had you before, like in terms of, let's say, you know, kind of the modeling of behavior and expectations, they really do a lot of good work for you if they're the right students that are following you to the next semester.
I'll go next. Maria Rodriguez, and I'm teaching, well, I don't have LC experience. I've taught a little bit of everything now. So I've taught composition, reading, I've even taught some lit courses. I taught integrated reading and writing before at Central Arizona College. But I'm really excited to work with both of you, and I know Mary Ellen and I have talked about doing some real life application writing with scholarship application and personal statement essays. So we're talking about digital portfolios, and then I'm looking right now at your guys' OER psych book, which is amazing, by the way. So I've been integrating some chapter readings from psychology to, for example, I taught a lesson on bias, and you guys had a really good example. So I'm really looking forward to starting to teach these courses with you guys, and although we have a lot of planning still, but so yeah, I'll be teaching in the fall for our FYE course with WAC, which WAC classes are developmental courses, by the way, if you aren't familiar with that. Yeah, so there are pretty much our dev ed courses, and I'm just thinking about this too now. Hopefully those students can follow me to 102, because most of them do, and they did this year, which is nice. So anyways, anything else? No, that's it.
Okay, perfect. I'm Michelle Claren, and I'm an English teacher. I have no experience with LCs, but I am really excited to start. I do a lot of work with place-based writing, and that felt like a perfect fit with Tom. So we're going to do a geology English class in the spring.
It's going to be awesome.
So, Tom Little, so this is my first year, residential, teaching geology and geography. Michelle and I have become friends in our training. I have no learning experience. We are excited. We are excited. I finished my PhD in 2023. I went back to school a second time for climate change. It's just been my last year. So the thought of teaching my geography class, which covers the state of the planet, and having Michelle get them to organize their thoughts and be able to put it down in written word. They leave this class wanting to protect the environment, and clearly science is not communicating that properly well, and I'm just so excited. So I have no experience. I trust her implicitly. And yes, we're naive, but if you ask us, we plan on planning it, building it, teaching it, evaluating it, and then publishing the paper.
We're going to have so much fun doing it.
Yeah. It's those naive folks that we like the best. Right on in.
I want to say thank you because you're representing science in a way we haven't been able to in a while. Chemistry had a little bit of an enrollment challenge. But more than that, because Mike Santorum and I had talked for a year or two after COVID about the possibility of starting LCs, and then sadness happened. So I'm really glad to see that there is a geo-represented LC now, or that we're leaning in that direction. So.
Yeah, I agree completely. Okay, you go.
I'm Kate Hope, and I teach composition, and I have no experience with learning communities, but I'm excited to teach with Dr. Romero in the fall, and we're going to do our Psych 101 English 101 class, and then I'm teaching one with Maria Root in the spring, and it will be
Yeah.
I'm glad we're getting to keep that one going.
Yeah, it'd be good. I'm David Finley. I'm an English and Humanities faculty. I'm co-coordinating learning communities with Greg, and I'm the division chair, faculty chair for Composition, Creative Writing, and Literature division. I have been doing learning communities since fall of 2001. I interviewed for a job here in fall of 2001 that I did not get, and Diane Chardon holds that position. But the chair called me and was very nice in her letting me down about not getting the full-time job, but said, hey, we do have this learning community teaching Intro to Cinema and English 101, and we'd like to offer it to you. And of course I was like, absolutely, because I was someone that had a humanities degree, so though my background wasn't necessarily in film, I checked a box for them in terms of being able to teach that, and it was my first time teaching it that fall. And then I taught 2 more learning communities at South Mountain Community College, which had been my home institution for many years, one with a CPD course, a counseling course, and one with a Sociology 101 class. And then I got an OYO here at Chandler Gilbert and was teaching 2 learning communities a semester, every semester until I became chair, pretty much. Like 53 learning communities or something like that over the years. So I've done them a lot, many of them by myself, because I can teach both of those classes, and it also frees up other people to have these really enriching collaborations that I would have kind of hogged if I'd have really had my own way. I am teaching learning communities in the fall. I'm teaching English 101 with the Intro to Holocaust Studies class, so I'll do both of those. And so I can say, for the benefit of the room, everybody in the room, including Greg and I, are teaching learning communities in the fall and working with new partners or building new things. So we're all kind of in the same boat as far as that goes with the training, whether we have 0 experience or whether we have tons of experience. We're all building these things together. So anyhow, we're super glad to have you here. We're super glad to keep the tradition going of a learning community program that, at least in my mind, has been active since 1994. That's 30 years, starting with the dean, though he mentioned yesterday that it goes back even a little bit further than that. So it really is a long-established program with a lot of successes and some ups and downs that go with changes in everything, administration being one of those, but health and pandemic and politics as well. So we're going to try to get you off to a good start as far as this goes. I think that what most of you really want is quality time with your partners, right? And probably a little less stuff from me and Greg, though Greg and I will try to give you a little bit of stuff just to kind of get you off on the right track, we hope, in terms of designing these. And I think this is kind of maybe where we want to go next, if this makes any sense. I will say, for the learning communities at Chandler Gilbert, as you guys know, they're usually 2 courses combined together. Occasionally there's been a 3rd course, so as you mentioned what you did, Fernando, with the 1 credit FYE in English 101 and a Psych 101. We have had some 3-course models, and that might be a nice one to bring back depending on how this work with FYE goes and Mary Ellen, and if the counseling folks get excited about the potential. As we've mentioned in the past, before there were fields of interest, we kind of offered 3 types. There were the developmental ones, which was a focus paired with 1 and 3 credit hour student success courses. Those were AAA 110 and 112 and 115, kind of pre-FYE. We do a lot of gen ed stuff, primarily just thinking about transfer to the universities. That's where our students go. When you think about completion rates as a sign of student success as a metric, it's certainly one of the ones that's less for us at Chandler Gilbert in terms of our students. They're more likely to be transfer students than completion students, so we've been trying to track that. And what they usually need for ASU is gen ed courses, right? 6 hours of comp, 6 hours of humanities, 6 hours of social behavioral science. Primarily a psych class is their first choice for that. So that's kind of been it. Some with professions in mind, maybe business being the longest running one in that area. But we certainly have some room for other areas. Like I mentioned, undeclared is maybe one of those places. We're going to talk about integration a little bit, but the other thing that's up there is contextualization, which I think has been thrown around and you may be familiar with, but we're going to focus on integration. And what I'd like to do in the folders that you have, the blue folders, is maybe pull out that 1-page statement by AAC&U, and maybe before you look at it, maybe on the back of it, if you don't have a spare sheet of paper, is I might ask you to just think about what integration means to you. Some of you may have already done your homework, not that you needed to, but if you did, maybe your ideas have changed a little bit. But I'm interested in what you think integration is, what integration actually might look like in your classroom, how do you recognize it, and let's see what that is before we take a look at the statement and see how that informs or contradicts or aligns with any of our opinions.
And just to add a little context on LCs at CGC, we've primarily been fully integrated in the past. We're encouraging more linked, and we've also looked at other models like Pocket LCs and encouraging people to warm up on the on-ramp to a fully integrated LC by trying to partner in small ways through common intellectual experiences and that sort of thing. So you all have and chosen to engage in one of the more intense versions of that. But if you have friends who aren't sure if what you're doing is for them, you can always encourage them to try and come up with a common intellectual experience or a smaller Pocket LC or discuss that on-ramp toward the fully integrated too. But now statement on it.
And I'll just ask you to put down some notes for yourself to kind of see where you are, and then you can just read the statement and see maybe what stands out to you. Things that maybe align with kind of what you thought integrative learning was, and maybe anything that surprised you in terms of integrative learning. Now, Fernando, I know that you've been through this before, so this is not your first time looking at this. John, too. So maybe think about it if anything has changed since the last time you read this a year or two ago, since it's not your first glimpse at it. Mary Ellen, too, actually.
Me too, what?
Not your first time looking at this.
Oh, no.
So maybe if anything's changed over the years for you, Mary Ellen.
Well, I'm about to read it, so thank you, because I haven't read it in quite some time.
Anybody still reading or need a little more time? I'll ask those of you that maybe have not looked at it before, so maybe John and Fernando and Mary Ellen, if you want to wait a second for your reactions. But maybe things that stood out to you that either kind of affirmed what you were already thinking about integrative learning, or if that is not the case, maybe something that stood out to you and surprised you one way or another.
I like to focus on making connections across content areas and solving real-world problems, among many other things, but that really stood out to me.
That hit me also because Michelle was a good sport and she came along on one of our geoscience field trips.
Nice.
So we tried to bridge the gap between the classroom and going out and appreciating the planet and wanting to protect it. And I'm just reading this. I'm taking 2 students next week over to the Concord School of Journalism. The class is impactful in that they want to do something to protect the environment. And I just have a feeling if we combine this, that we're going to send it, we're going to create journalism, environmental journalism students. And this document kind of reaffirms that's a possible outcome.
That's nice, and actually, it's a nice link to, let's say, that collaborative piece at the very bottom there, where they talked about, the 2 years working with 4-year schools, or colleges working with K-12, as we think about our own involvement with dual enrollment and our partners here in Southeast Valley. But there are these extra additional opportunities to maybe create those partnerships. Obviously with ASU Poly on the same campus as Williams, an extra place to maybe build or foster some of those relationships as you guys find out what's out there and what seems doable. Other things that stood out to people, maybe? Or Fernando or Mary Ellen, John, since you've read this before, things that struck you maybe a little differently than the last time you read it, or more relevant today?
I would say that I underlined, I highlighted 2 key things. Number 1, integrated learning assists students in pursuing their college experience in more intentional and connected ways. So as a long-term LC educator, and as I'm thinking about what Maria and I are planning for the fall, that's where we begin our conversation, right? What are the intentional connections here that we can do? From an institutional level, I think that's maybe a different kind of highlight, but the last sentence of the first paragraph, an emphasis on integrative learning can help undergraduates put the pieces together and develop habits of mind that prepare them to make an informed judgment in the conduct of personal, professional, and civic life. Actually, that whole paragraph, but especially that statement, I would argue that that's a better reason to do all in on retention at Chandler Gilbert, and that learning communities are a cornerstone of that all in on retention piece that we should do a better job highlighting and arguing as a resource and a valuable tool for Chandler Gilbert. Because all in on retention is what? Keep them here, do this, do that. But it's always from such a, strategic, tactical business model. And that's not us. So that spoke to me for that.
Well, I was a Mesa Community College student myself in 2000 to 2002. And I will tell you guys, I was a struggling student in regards to when I took my courses, I didn't see how they connected. So I was like, I'd go to my math class, my English class, a very low math class, by the way, because I never studied. I had really good reading comprehension. So, and it was interesting because where I struggled was just how to study for each class. I wasn't connecting like chemistry and math. You have to memorize things, right? And so, and then when I was what I was starting to understand, like this skill I'm doing actually applies to these other classes, and my writing skills, which was my strength, which is how I, got by most of the time, was a strength in all areas because that's normally I did well in the essay writing. So I think that's the connection I feel like we need to make with our students, and that's what I've seen is like they need to understand the way they acquire knowledge is different in these areas, but there's like a skill set that they all can use, and if they can start making those connections, like And that's, I try to do that in my class, like, what we're going to do right now in annotated bib, you're going to do that in other classes. Just so I think that's the connection I'm hoping for students to make, is like they start seeing, because when I was teaching 102 last year and I was teaching intersectionality, they had heard about it in another psych course or communication course, I believe. And so I found that to be interesting, is that the students were already making those connections from other classes. I don't know who the instructor was, but I thought that was kind of interesting. So I saw the theory part too.
Yeah. I want to go off of what both of you have said, in the sense that I feel like from reading this and then my understanding of LC is like making what is kind of invisible-ish to some students more bare, more obvious. You're supposed to know how to take notes. You're supposed to know how to, but when do they actually like teach you the thing? And I feel like this is kind of making it just, LCs seem to be making it just really way more obvious, which is good, especially with the type of students that tend to come to community college for various reasons at various different points in their lives, and saying like, no, you are supposed to connect, don't silo it. That's not going to help. Like, you are supposed to connect it. It actually works best for everyone if you do that, and this is how. And we're just making it more obvious, more apparent.
Well, it was interesting because where it was a turning point for me was in my psych course. It was the hardest class I had, and I was struggling. And the psychology professor is like, you have to memorize the theory and apply it. Like, you can't just like write about it and not understand it. And it was kind of interesting because it was a breaking point where I had to kind of apply both. I had to write well, but then I had to take tests and I had to memorize things. And he's like, you write well, right? Now you just have to memorize things. I was like, oh, okay. I have to get tutoring, I have to get help. But it kind of took like a bunch of instructors saying different things to me to make that connection. It was kind of interesting. So it was my psych class. That was my psych professor.
Fine, I'll learn.
I'll try now.
I think that my school experience was similar to Maria's, where I didn't see the transfer from one class to another. And I like what they said about how this should be available to all students throughout their college years, and it should be a cornerstone of a 21st century education. I think if that is the case, students will begin to see that transfer and how this matters here, this matters here, and you need to know how to write in every class you take.
I mean, I'll say that it was a psychology class that also made me maybe get excited, make me realize in my own learning that I was learning stuff, because I'd learned theories, right, in my English classes, which we were supposed to apply to, let's say, books. So I'd learn about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or, something with Freud, or something with Jung. So I'd have some theories, and then we'd get to apply them to characters and, literary works. But then I took psychology classes, and all of a sudden I was hearing the same things that had come up there. So as soon as I started hearing things that came up in other classes, in different classes, for some reason, as a kid that took a year off before going to college, I kind of felt like, okay, yeah, I'm learning stuff, like I'm getting stuff. It just really kind of reaffirmed that I was learning, that I was paying attention and getting the things that I was supposed to get. But it was certainly re-energizing, and I'm not sure that I would have stayed in college or been as successful in college if it wasn't for seeing those connections and seeing them earlier. That just made me think, okay, all these things are connected. And in that sense, I need to start going to all these classes, because I'm going to miss something that's connected because I'm not there. And I certainly was someone who didn't go to all my classes my first semester in college, especially the first one of the day. So it became the thing was like, I'm missing things where connections are being made. And so it became kind of a motivation in a way to kind of pay attention and be a little more engaged as a student. But to see those things for myself, not to have someone point them out for me, but to provide the opportunities for me to see those things and almost like feel like I was seeing them for myself, right? Yeah, right. Here they are. Can you see them? I'm seeing them. That helped.
Frank, did you have a...
I was thinking, you have critical arguments that are the basis of essays, like cause and effect and criteria, blah, blah. But by taking compositional skills applying to another discipline, students have an opportunity to learn to, darn, if I could only write legibly, I could have been somebody. To be able to synthesize and develop multiple skills in a subject, also by applying the critical reading and writing and synthesis and thinking skills that were required or are the major part of compositional studies. We don't have learning communities at GCU where I also teach, but I kind of forced one. Because my teaching assistant and I are both finishing our doctorates together in psychology. So I had her give a psychology lecture in my writing for the sciences class, and it spurred a lot of interest by students who only learn about stuff we're writing about in the writing class. But by taking topics from psychology or applied psychology, I said, okay, if you want to write about that, you can write about that. So it got them to see a completely different subject in a way that they wouldn't see before, and wouldn't apply those writing skills that we do to another subject. I mean, can't imagine writing about geology, you know. I mean, that's completely opens up a lot of different ways to look at knowledge and applying, developing different ways of learning.
Other things.
Yeah. So the opposite of integration is disintegration. And in psychology, that actually points towards problems in terms of mental health. Any psychological disorder is a disorder of disintegration. And if you look historically, we have looked at the sciences, and even the Industrial Revolution is a really very narrow-minded way of looking at separate things, as opposed to looking at how the sum is bigger than, the greater is bigger than the sum of the parts. So I was having a really interesting conversation with Kate yesterday about our learning community, and she described to me how in writing, what she aims to do primarily is for these students to look outside of themselves and being able to reflect and not be like me mentality. And then I was describing how I think that that's the sickness in our society, because we are very isolated. We live very individual lives. We don't know our neighbors. We only think about this narrow piece of the puzzle here, and we fail to see how it connects to like the whole planet, for example. So I think when we become integrated, we become healthier. We allow the flow of information to actually bring wellness within ourselves and across other people. And if we bring this to the students, then they cannot any longer say, this class has nothing to do with me. This class has nothing to do with my life. And then it becomes a lot more meaningful.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Last things, maybe?
I think what I've heard from a lot of people are like the connections and integration causes, the things that they saw, developed personal interest and personal really decisive kind of thing. Like I want to continue this education because I'm seeing these connections, right? So really a personal kind of motivation kind of thing. And I think that's really helpful because some of our students I think lack that. I mean, the odds are against many of the students that are even transferring and graduating with a degree. So anything that sparks that kind of personal interest and personal motivation, intrinsic motivation is so important.
Yeah.
So I think I see that just the way you were talking, like, I saw the connection, and that changed my entire education perspective. It's great.
Yeah, and sometimes this is where the example I think of, like, it's not even really what they learn this is like a counterintuitive thing that I think anybody would say in front of an administrator or somebody else. But it's like, it's not really what they learn in the class in terms of the course content so much as those other intangible, soft, skilly type of things that's going to make them have the habits of mind, if you will, to persist in anything, right? An education, a relationship, a job, right? Whatever it is. But I think about all the years of reading this statement every year, and the thing that stands out to me really is that phrase that you pointed out in the end of the first paragraph, Mary Ellen, is that habits of mind, right? Is that really that thing that, by the way, is represented, at least in one form, by this chart. I'm sure there's other habits of mind out there, but I think that this is interesting because I think about the students that I see years later from my learning communities, and they'll always comment on something that they remember, and it's really never anything super content related about, let's say, the literature or the film or the humanities. It's always like habit stuff, and it's more them hearing me in the back of their head when they're writing saying, like I've seen in your class, Michelle, so what? Like, that's what they hear, is like that guide looking at their thesis going, yeah, so what? Or like, why does that matter? Or what's the difference there? But I do think that those are maybe the things that are most important, right, that our students take away, especially when we think about students that are undeclared students, right, that don't even know what their major is, that have no idea what that is. And so I think about a conversation I had, and Mary Ellen, you'll remember this too, it was with Roy Schieser, who was a former geology instructor before Mike, and I remember he was very involved with SLOAC and general ed education assessment, and being in a room with him talking about assessment and thinking about our gen ed things of, personal development, critical thinking, information literacy, and communication. And I remember him saying, "Oh, I don't teach." Like literally, he said, "I don't do any of those things, right? I don't do any of those things. I'm a science teacher." Like he was like, "I'm a science teacher. I don't do any of those things." And all of a sudden, I was like, "You do all those things, right?" Because like of all, and this is, I apologize, right? But of all the sciences that students end up taking that they take because it's not their major, my stereotypical understanding of it is that they land in a geology or a geography class, right? And so I was thinking that those students, maybe now with the environmental issue they're more majors, but I was like, those students are there because they don't want any other science, and they're really there for gen ed. If there's anything you do, it's gen ed education. And then I thought about it for myself. Very rarely do I have an English major in my class, right? They're not an English major, right? And if they are an English major, they're not interested in Ret Comp, right? They're interested in creative writing or literature. And so I'm like, that's also maybe not the most important things that my students need, though they are my course competencies and the course content. Maybe what's really more important for those students in a ways is critical thinking, written and oral communication, personal development, right? Like coming to class, handing shit on time, letting people know you're going to be late, or those types of things that are going to make someone successful. That's way beyond the course content stuff that some of us can get kind of super bogged down in, especially when you think about a History 104 class that's got 24 course competencies, and you're like, okay, I've got to hit 2 a week, to get through these this semester. How am I going to take time?
It's just the textbook chapter.
Right? How am I going to take time to slow down and write a paper with Frank, right? And so, but I do think that intentional, the intentionality of what we do, that's part of that statement. The unscripted opportunities that are these authentic things that are not canned experiences that I think our co-curricular and other events provide for us, and that habits of mind I think is really sticks with me out of that little statement as long as it's 21 years old, and that's the thing that really still sticks with me as far as that goes.
And not to overstate the obvious, and Julia, I saw your hand, so I'll make it very quick, but the time is just, we're kind of glossing over the obvious, but when you teach a learning community, you just simply have more face or touch time with students. I mean, metaphorical touch. And that allows for that thinking, learning, understanding, integration, connection to just grow in a way that maybe a hybrid or an online or, I only see these students an hour and 15 minutes a week. Suddenly we were seeing these little kids in this room, 40 students, 42 students for 3+ hours a week, and then you talk about them and you grow with them and they cry with you and they laugh with you. And that's just the time and space that allows that. All right, who's longer than I want to go ahead?
Mine was a logistics question just based on what you were saying. Do you recommend having in the LCs the course policies be the same as far as like turning in late assignments, that sort of thing to make it easier on the student?
I would say that it's probably a best practice is to work those out. That's part of what the faculty compatibility survey is there for a little bit, that you work those out in advance so they don't unravel in front of students in a class in live time. But I do think that that'll probably look a little differently. I think in the past, the people that are integrated, kind of more team teaching, they really are maybe need to have policies that are really in line with each other. And if you're in a situation where maybe it's linked, then you might have a separate, slightly different policy about some things because you're really just working in your own class. And by that I mean also maybe also in your own Canvas shell in a way. You may have, and this would depend too, you may have a shared Canvas shell if you're team teaching and fully integrated. You may find that that's useful for students to have one place to go versus two to manage. But you may also feel like, I've got so much, like I really need my own Canvas place. But I think that may determine it. If everything's in the same Canvas, then maybe it's best that there's the same policies and they'll be in that same syllabus. If you're working with two different Canvas shells, then maybe there seems to be a little more room to kind of stick to what you usually do or feel most comfortable with without having to do too much compromise. That's maybe the benefit of wanting to do linked, is like, okay, I can still do things my way, and you can do things your way. But if you're integrated, you may want to find that common spot.
I'll just add, just from experience of what I've seen directly, basically, as far as I know, have one course, like, it was immediately apparent that it was a big mistake. And that was different expectations of students. So if I go into the mindset that, if they don't get to this level, the best they can do is a C, versus like all students have potential to, some mismatched expectations about that, or lateness, attitudes about how I feel about a student coming in when they really want, just sitting down and getting to work, versus how you might feel about that. But I know you're going to do compatibility survey, figuring out those things of expectations of students, and is there a mismatch?
Yeah, plagiarism, AI use, some other things that are more recent to consider.
It's kind of like those conversations you're supposed to have before you get married. About, like, let me agree on this. Let me agree on this.
I would say so.
I'll give a little on this one.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a prenup. There's something like that to it.
With Heather, I noticed a pattern. I don't know if it was because of COVID or anything like that, but we really needed to tackle these issues early on because the chemistry of the group is critical for a learning community. If you have one bad chemistry in a class that is isolated, you can almost like work with that, because these are two integrated courses. If students are not meeting the expectations, or if you're off to a rough start, that's going to be two courses that are really impacting the whole community. So this conversation is really, really important. And what we had to do in the past to learning communities is to be very gentle with some students and guide them to take separate courses. So we did do that, and we had kind of like a plan of action, and we even Heather Horn, so it was color coded. From yellow to green to red. So and we were very clear about that, and it really saved the classroom dynamics.
So some of them were kicked out
So
in a nice
we
way.
actually had to gently help transition some students out of the learning community into regular courses. And it may be that it was the draw that locked, part of our issue, not this past year, but the year before, is that I think counselors, enrollment counselors were not really on top of things. And we had to do kind of like an artificial intervention to bring students into the learning community, so we actually have to stop enrollment. So it seems that some students that didn't necessarily ask for it or didn't necessarily know what they were getting themselves into wind up in that community, and it was not necessarily a good expectation. So an expectation for them, so we actually have to do that. So it's very important early on to tackle these things, to nip them in the bud, because it may impact your community for the remaining of the semester.
And if you're looking at a new partnership or just it's something you kind of come back and negotiate, there are times when Casey, Pam, and I, or Mike and I would come up to the new semester and be like, so are we keeping this the same because we had these challenges last time? But having those important kind of premarital conversations or ongoing conversations. Do you agree about money? Do you agree about AI? Whatever it is, and making sure that you know the policy. If you're going to have a different policy, make sure you know both the policy the other person's going to have and their rationale for it, so that when students ask you, it's not mom against dad or whatever gender stereotypes as they are. But it is a very meaningful thing to say, like, if there's something, if you care about people being in their seat, being on time, and you're going to be either penalizing or rewarding them for that, that you guys know the why you believe that thing. Or if they miss a class, or does a partial attendance count as a tardy, that kind of thing, or tardy count as an absence. There were times with the Math LC where, because of the nature of the assignment, we said, well, these types of assignments we're both okay with giving them 3 days on, but these types of assignments, you care a lot about this, and so I don't, but I trust you. And sometimes that's what the negotiation process is. I'm like, it really doesn't matter if they turn it in the day of for these. Is that okay? And they're like, sure. And then they're like, but it really matters. So having those conversations, making sure that if you don't care about something and the other person does, then you know, that you feel comfortable enforcing that as a pair.
So I also, so we're talking solely about integrated classrooms where teachers are teaching together, right? So I just want to, I don't want to scare the new people, right? Because these are fully integrated. So the linked classes, that's not necessarily a thing that has to happen. It's probably good to have those conversations, but it's not something that you can still keep some autonomy, right? So I just want to make sure that nobody's running for the door and thinking, oh my God, if I don't have a paid policy, then I'm
That's
out.
true.
Right?
And it is important I still think it's important that if they're going to have different policies, you're still able to, you're not on the other side going, oh, that's because they're one of those professors. That undercuts the authority of your teaching partner, even if you're just linked.
Yeah.
But absolutely, yeah, you don't necessarily have to do full-blown, in-depth, negotiation of it, as long as you're okay supporting their rationale for it.
Like I just said right now, the AI conversation.
Yeah.
They have diametrically opposed
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
Do you guys do a couples therapy?
I would think that someone in your area would offer that for us, right?
The one semester with the divorce, it was actually a conversation of, were you going to divorce this semester? Because there was literally an instructor that was pretty sure everybody's going to do that from the start. And another person was like, no, if they get a D on the essay, they get a D on the essay. So there was actually literally a sit down and say, what are you going to do for the rest of the semester? You got these students in front of you. I bring up that one bad news. Let me switch to the one thing I heard you talk about. I'm curious about what you think about the offering multiple solutions and that multiple benefits. That's one thing that when I read it this time that I haven't focused on too much. Think about climate change. As soon as you start having a conversation, we should do this. People already have the argument about why not. So a mindset of, well, there are multiple solutions. Then you start going through and think, is another habit of mind is positive. How do I do good?
You're a master at that as far as it goes. We're talking a little bit of nuts and bolts stuff, and I was thinking we would do a little bit more nuts and bolts next time. But if there are nuts and bolts stuff weighing on you that you feel like you want to get out of the way, I guess we could answer a couple more questions about that. The other thing that we had planned, and I don't have a problem if it were to continue, but we have 50 minutes. We were going to do some speed dating and put you with some partners that are not your partner, really just to give you some practice at this idea of integration and maybe stretching or expanding your ability to think about pairing with other courses beyond the ones that you thought you were going to pair with, just as an exercise, if you will. And so that's one of the reasons you have your course description and competency at the beginning of the folder, is that so you can have it to maybe remind yourself, not that you don't know what your course competencies are, but for the partner, so that they can review those and think about which might be best with pairing their own courses. So we want to do a little speed dating. And this is always hard because you don't want to put the composition people, team teaching with other composition people, because it doesn't go very far. And so what I'll try to do is maybe put people with non-composition faculty and start there, but I don't know how it's going to work out evenly.
So all this talk about this being a marriage, and I'm already cheating on Michelle?
Well, I don't know that the marriage has been, it's not been
We're speed dating?
you've not been wed yet, right? So this is maybe your last chance to, right. Maybe May 30th when the compatibility survey comes in, that's your wedding certificate.
So,
yeah, I don't know.
So maybe to get started, if you
I wasn't expecting it.
If you want, just for logistics, if you want to grab your course competencies, and let's just have everybody stand up, and since comp is the most high, let's have all the comp professors line up on one side here, and then everyone else can pick a new partner, logistics-wise.
You can
Or
be
whatever
there,
you
and
have
then they
in-
can be
whatever-
surprised when they get you
Yeah.
that you're not actually comp.
Though there might be less, standing.
I gave you a
Stand and
choice
talk.
there, obviously, if you felt like maybe reading was a little more fun
So, yeah,
for
if
somebody or
we
whatever.
wanna- So in a line, maybe go that way so you're not in your face. So let's do the line a little further over that way, just so nobody has the blinding light.
But you want all the composition people up here?
Yeah, all comp on one side, and then we'll pair up the others as needed. So
Yeah, this
everybody
is-
else still has to stand
this
up.
is like
Go find
a-
a partner.
Perp lineup. Not really.
Okay. So. And if
pretty close.
So take all the comp people.
There might be
and then
one that's not, but Mary Ellen
whoever's
will make up
left
the
is
difference,
left to
I
pair. So.
I think Mary Ellen will make up the difference.
Yeah. But I wrote a
Yeah.
dissertation about dance. So I'm a dancer. That's what the area team started a little bit.
That works, right? So is it Mary Ellen Fernando work?
No, Frank. I'm good.
Okay. Cool.
There you go.
All right.
Okay.
So you can share your course description and competencies with your partner. Identify 2 or 3 that work best with your course. So if you want to swap or if you want to talk through it, either way.
Okay, so, either one
So
of us.
actually, I don't have.
all of that stuff. So I do all of that stuff, but really, I'm trying to. So, like, analyze each film through either production elements or also through, like, different lenses of analysis.
You know, it's interesting because I do rhetorical analysis and we do music videos. So I show them, for example,
The facilities are so convenient.
Childish Gambino.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so I just, I'm teaching it to the cinema right now, so we just did
I love that movie. It's so good. That's my favorite sci-fi movie.
It's amazing. We talk about, we do the basics of like what the sky is and all that shit, but we also, and you know, and it's in the larger genre of sci-fi and things that we mostly from the like, you know, the final world. What are the things that we do to just kind of get them together? So I started off the class with all of it's personal. So how is it doing that? Like instead of being swept away, or they just, you know,
Like I watch a bunch of
I
movies.
know, I like this film. I like it. I was like, yeah, no. You know, what's the generations? How are they trying to do it? How effective is it? How effective is it? So those are the kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, that's rhetorical. Things from different lenses and you look at it. And it's hard for them because they just want to say what they feel. And I'm like, Joe, what do you think they were trying to accomplish? What do you think the writer or director is trying to accomplish?
And I give around 10 or 15 minutes on how you feel.
Yeah, thank you. You may see me before it's all over again.
Get it out. And then we start going into like scratching, you know, the surface and going deeper into it. And occasionally we'll go to production elements, you know, because it is important how lighting affects things, how sound affects things.
Yeah, that would be, so I had Adam Roberts.
Yeah, I think we had 50 minutes, right? 2:30, and we can go over a little bit since we started late.
And he gave me feedback. He was the one that actually, so at first I did something kind of light, party, so I was afraid, like,
And then one thing I thought we would do,
I was like, well,
well,
you know.
one thing in there is I think what I've done is kind of to add an extra element, like, you know, think about your course competencies and your gen ed thing. And then it was like, okay, now do that again on day 2, and I think it was like, now pick a theme. And then I think it was like, now do that, pick a theme and think about your hip. So I think there's a little bit of a progression on those when you look at them for what it's worth.
Do you want to do that, or do you want to have them do kind of change pairs with basics?
I think change pairs and take it an extra level each time, I think. And then at the end, I think that third one, we can have that thing about the pinch point that you talked about. And I don't know if it works, like to think about pitch point, like, because that's where I had, just in the slide, I think it's where the hips thing come up. I don't know if the hips is part of just a separate darn thing, or is there a way that we can think about hips as part of the helping on the pinch point part? You know what I mean? Like, because I think that people sometimes think about, like, I know me, you know, as a, you know, you do what you do, and you often don't stray from it. But I know that for some people, they might just have certain hips in mind because that's what they do. But now, paired with a different course, they might think, like, I really ought to do something different because of what this course is or what that pitch point thing is, and we should think about that. That's kind of what I was thinking a little bit about, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then at the end, we can just maybe go into the Canvas thing and show them the resources, the faculty compatibility survey, and then show them, like, because the one thing I did is I put in like a bold section that said like section 2 scenarios. So there's kind of a part 1 and 2, and that way we can say, hey, do the first 12, and then, you know, something like that, depending on time.
But it's but so one of the things that I struggle with as a student, and then I think you have students is that they struggle with.
Yeah. She was thinking, so that we could actually move forward in the fall immediately. So I think the idea was like to actually put it there in April, because that'll put it there at the April meeting, because if there's follow-up questions, they can be addressed at the first Friday in May meeting. And then we know in the fall we're cleared to kind of, right. Yeah. But we'll have, you know, whatever the first Friday is in April and a first Friday in May where there might be, like I said, usually some follow-up questions, especially maybe with you guys, you know, reading and people's ideas about it staying or not staying or whatever. But I think those things we talked about, like the newspaper articles about the 4th grade and 8th grade reading things, and some of those others that we've talked a little bit about just with program review and things. But yeah, I think if she can submit by April, before that April, it can be discussed at the April meeting, and then if there's any follow-up, it can also be addressed before we go away for the summer.
What is that? All of the music videos were like.
It could be either. I mean, I think we could be, like, I could say as chair, like, hey, it's reading. I'm not the reading faculty. I feel more comfortable with Mary Ellen being here to be able to fully represent reading, but I don't know that I can answer anything that comes up, right? And then you might be able to just answer whatever comes up, and if that suffices in April, it suffices. If they're like, well, we want some follow-up questions, and here's what they are, then you still have the May time to address, let's say, you know, what comes from another area. But I think having you there, and people will do that, like if Linda goes, she certainly has Fernando there to speak about Sonic, right? So I think that would probably be best.
There's this one where it's samurai, there's like a Japanese woman speaking.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
What, I don't know how long you saw it. I had MTV at my house, my husband content.
Right. And some of them, maybe you'll know better than I will, but you know, some of those folks, depending on the institution, were also maybe involved in learning communities, so they'd be a nice, you know,
So do you have
hit the ground running in that sense.
I'll just have you do something that's not on the slide before you rotate to your new partner. What's one unfamiliar competency on the list? We'll just before you rotate. And just explain that to the other person. Just 30-second Cliff Notes version. Find one that they're unfamiliar with. So what's one competency from your course that they aren't familiar with? Explain it to them in 30 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Or at least time.
So we're explaining one of their course topics.
Which I like, just.
You're explaining one of yours to them that they're less familiar with.
Okay, so
And if you want to walk this way so you don't have
I get it now. We have to be told.
heavenly light there, John, you can push Tom this way.
Or this.
Well, I'm just trying to get it out of you know.
I like exhibition for films.
Oh.
It's easy to be like, oh, it's the ones in the movie theater. Yeah, but actually it's streaming it out.
Okay, so courses for
And then really also what makes it for me like we're so far away from only the second hand, right? We can make movies and also big name directors are fans too. Everyone on his cell phone. So we start looking at those pictures. And I think it was good.
Oh, I talk about that in my class too. So I always show students writing is not like a math problem where you're like A plus B equals C. With
Yeah.
writing, you have to like, you might take stuff for it, but you have to.
It's actually, at 12:30 it was being Greg.
Sometimes you have to go backwards and
And then I think it was Tom, and I was like, yeah, it's probably going to be about a quarter to.
the writing process is not.
All right. So if I'm doing this with students, I have everybody give high fives or fist bumps. You're welcome to do that. But say thanks, and I'll tell you how we're going to move. So get to the next partner, so get your competency back. And I'm hoping this works right, but we want to basically cakewalk in a circle like this, 2 spaces. That should get us to okay pairings. So if you're on John's side, everybody moves to the right, actually. So you move counterclockwise, 2 spaces. So somebody has to start moving, yeah. So all the way around the circle like this. I'm just going to move my hands.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, keep going. And
I
then John, you
see.
can do mythology.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. With competition.
I think that looks right.
We only went
Yeah.
one though, I think, right? Do you want to go?
Oh, did you only move one?
We only moved one. I think.
I think those pairings, because it's Tom and Kate who are teaching, right? Tom and Michelle?
Yep.
I knew that. Sorry. Do we need to go? We don't want to do one.
I think only one row should have filtered.
Okay. What we'll do is we'll switch Michelle and Frank.
But we're too.
Glad I'm not the
I know he's
logistics
going to do
person on
mythology.
this one.
So yeah, Michelle and Frank switch and we'll be fine.
That's fine.
Okay.
I don't like you.
All right.
You know, and
There's
I
always a
spent
little
like
bit
the
of
first
fun
morning
with this
like thinking
part.
about pairings
Okay.
too, and then I'm like,
Now we're gonna
you know,
start
it's like,
by-
it's
start
like
by
students in
raising
drafts. You're like, I don't know who's going to show up. You know, I don't really know. Like, I put you in pairs, but are you even going to be here?
Geology and geography.
Me too.
Every time.
I said the same thing. I was like, I'm so glad it's me. Yeah. I tried to map these out beforehand. I'm glad I didn't because not everybody's here. So it'd have been a waste.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Wow, this is a long time. I mean, maybe freshen up on a So are you guys doing So they have the whole photo?
then I have some new students in my one or two that are just starting with and they clean them up and they
And so I've created a sense where they have to write like thesis
20 years to get some perspective on where this is at.
to their audience in their and so they have to kind of think of those as organized.
Yeah.
I need to fine tune my more to like what they've learned, what they like. I'm doing more like a literacy in regards to research. So I'm just trying to have me have to figure out. I'll have to show you one, and they're really good. So I have to proposal for it. I have a student too, for one of the students that served in the Middle East, and I'm yeah, and they were both on my whack. So it's not really it's just like you have two people that are normally fighting in a war in your class. Yeah. Anyways, for mythology. No, we're not supposed to do this. We're talking about political discussions and how to handle it and how to handle it. So you kind of discussions where it's about where like higher level discussions. Well, I do agree where I make the first discussion. Well, no.
Online. Okay, you're teaching online.
No, it's actually, but their final draft of it is online discussion. So teachers are discussion, right? How to get early discussion. So I can see a lot of this applying to that. This is obviously like more story.
Second question.
Mythology. I never taught mythology because I was part of it when I was a K-12. And I never taught mythology. Is this your area of study?
No. I think a lot of this reminds me of like Trinity, where they take a hero story and research on the hero story, but you're organizing and explain what are the middle values.
Should I brew more coffee? I can brew more quickly. No, I can do a half pot fairly quickly. I'll do that. Okay. Yeah. Then why are you apologizing for something that I like doing for people? I mean, how dare you? You should feel terrible, emotional guilt and shame. Does it make it easier or harder when I say it that way? Well, that's not what I want. Just like it's par for the course. That's funny. You hanging in there? Also, I'm sorry for the CCL division meeting where I was not. That my perspective had unintended consequences, and I'm sorry about that. So I'm trying not to rile people up.
Go to bed. Tomorrow's a new day. Economy. Big gas. Great gym resist.
If you haven't yet, you might take a look at the new questions on this slide and see if you can have some more specific conversations if you haven't already kind of explored some of these things. How did you get, John, you do like the spotlights. So Maria and John, just Maria and John, just there, yeah. So consider what type of theme or contemporary issue could be used as part of an assignment or to help you achieve your shared outcomes or goals for this pairing.
Are those all maps?
They are, because I pulled the DV club in here because we got to 25 and the 3 rooms helps with noise control.
Did you buy those or did you have them?
They I printed them. So yeah, it's club related, so it counts.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Student related, it's related.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah.
They
No, I mean,
can't limit it that big,
I was invited
and
to do a thing at the
honestly,
U.S. Holocaust
students
Museum.
don't
I've
care
been
as
to a
much
couple, but
about,
they'll send you.
like, they're a whole,
They'll
like,
send
half the
you
group
the
are like,
readings,
we're fine
the
data
expectation
line
that you
or
work at a
whatever.
university and
Or they'll,
databases,
one or
and then
two
all of a sudden I
groups
start
will,
looking,
use
and
the
I'm
overhead
like,
projectors.
we don't have the Eastern European,
But yeah, so-
or the Slavic languages journal. Like, that's not what we have. And that's when I finally
It's
realized,
fun
oh,
stuff.
we only have certain ones that, and even the ones that we've got, we don't always have the most recent years, and we're not going to go back to like 1912, right? And so there's a huge gap because of how much they pay for them. But I know that students will get a little frustrated with like thinking that databases are kind of pieces of shit. They never find anything. I'm like, that's because we're not paying full dollar for everything that's out there because we're a community college and we're not doing that kind of research, et cetera. But it took me a while to figure it out, and it was only like that experience where I'm like, oh. And then that's when I had to explain.
We got to the first agenda item, which was discussing the new funding model potential.
Things, right?
Yeah.
But you can make some requests. I know that but sometimes there's some things that are like, that they're just cheap, right? So they're like, oh, we can get you that journal because it's cheap. And then this journal, no, there's no way. Like you said, it's $2,000. You're like, no way. But Linda might be helpful. I wish they would, but I doubt they would. They'd want us to pay, right? They want to make money on it, right?
Did you guys
versus, let's say,
did you already do
the collegiality and
the part where you explained a weird part of the course or a less familiar part of the course outcomes? Did you do that part? Did you talk themes? Did you already discuss a part of their course competencies you're less familiar with? Did you do that part yet?
Other than it becomes.
And did you do the theme or contemporary issue
language? Like, I don't really know that.
play here? Good.
Maybe.
All right. David, do we want to do one more round, or do you think it's time to get them to?
We can do one more.
Okay. Well, the next one's going to be a speed round a little bit. Actually, no, it won't. But so which direction should we go? Should we do 2 more? So rotate 2 more spots counterclockwise. Let's see what we end up with. Part of the fun is the exploration. We'll see how good or bad this goes. So take 2 circles, 2 steps to the right, basically. Two people to the right. It's okay.
Mary Ellen can
Just
step
follow
in.
the next person. Yeah, we'll get there.
Mary Ellen can step in.
Is it?
She's got to go.
That seems right. Yeah. And one, oh, she's going to go. Okay, so Mary Ellen's going to jump in.
Mary Ellen's got to jump in, yeah.
So then, rotate around. And then Mary Ellen will join.
Who am I joining?
You want to, John or Kate?
Kate.
There we go.
Pick your favorite.
Cool. So John can do
no
mythology
offense.
again. All right. Now, so do the basics, and then I'm going to give you a new task this time around afterwards. So take a couple minutes, do the same thing we did before. I'll put those up on the screen. And Frank, if you want to take a step forward just so your hair's not getting caught.
Yeah, you're okay. I wanted to ask you a quick question. Because we're
Wait
paying
for
faculty,
it.
not full-time faculty, because they're But people had asked about it, and you and Frank and Eric are the three. But I wanted to see, I can certainly do like on Monday, fill out a pay form and get you guys paid, and then do that after each session, so you get 3 separate pays, which some people thought, yeah, they'd like that. Or, and I'll ask the other 2 people what they think about it. Or if you're okay with it and you trust us, we can certainly just do one pay and you can get it all at the end. So I mean, it's up to you. I'm willing to do it either way. It's just filling out a dynamic form. But some people like to have it along the way. Some people like to have it kind of accumulate so they've got a little bit more at the end in terms of something worth spending. So you don't have to give me an answer right now, but think about it. Let me know your preference, and I'll ask Erica and Frank and see if we can land on the same page. Okay, let's see what they have as a preference for. Okay, and I'll email and I'll let you know where we landed. Thanks, Bethany.
I made some more coffee.
Thank you.
You always seem to get the tail end of it.
Well, that's because I drink more than one cup.
Yeah.
One cup.
First of all,
Sure.
very little is required.
I kind of, I don't
Here or bigger? Go ahead.
We struggle with enrollment.
I think one of the biggest challenges people are seeing is they feel like even now we're being I was doing some of the math and we were looking at getting the numbers anchored because it's hard to do on the fly when we try.
I'm just curious.
So
It's the first time I've seen that. Who failed you?
looking at scale or try to just checking out 2.5.
So a lot of times
Hey,
Based on what was left over?
And so that was I'll send you the video for the conversation. I want to do math. I want to see what the options are. We probably have to show people.
I think people want to see some options and they want to vote. The thing is, on voting, like, is it, and like, is that everybody on the committee or just people that are teaching? That's fair.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to make it weird, a little weird now. So,
Right. Yeah.
So I'll tell you a story first, and then I'll ask you to kind of see what it does for you. After I had been teaching with Mike a couple semesters, we were doing this, and we got bored with doing the same general questions, and so some of you have heard the story, but I asked Mike, what's the thing you really it's your least favorite part to teach in your competencies? Tell me why, and then let me see if something I could do would solve that. And so he ended up saying that chemistry nomenclature, which is literally the language of chemistry, was so boring because it was just memorizable facts, and he hated teaching it. And I'm like, but that's language, and I teach linguistics as part of my course, and so I just took over that part of his curriculum, and it was covered. Mm-hmm. So the question to you with this partner, and then you'll carry this answer through when you get back to your regular actual pair. What is the thing you like teaching least but are required to cover? What is or if it's like, I love everything, what's the thing that's like the dull point, right? If you're good at everything, what's the one that's not as good, if it helps to frame it more positively that way? But do that with your current partner and hang on to those and see what that comes from that.
You got it?
No.
Oh,
yeah, go for it. I know.
I mean, I don't like teaching rhetorical
Yeah.
opinions.
I mean, like, for instance, like for Chris Ryder, like, I mean, I was thinking, okay, we have an April meeting, we can come back to it in April, but I think his idea was like, it needs to happen sooner because people need to make that decision. Like in some cases, he's like, if it's not a certain thing, I may not be teaching a learning community. So, right. Well, there was more than one person. 3 or 4.
bringing more
Most
seniors.
of them.
Well, I like that they're practicing it. It's like you've got to like
True. True.
somebody else's work as a model. And that's what actual analysis is, where they're just examining someone else's work and taking on what's happening with it. Versus when they're writing, those skills and they're practicing or they're giving a speech or something.
It was one of those things I was conversation
Because I love
Yeah,
hacking.
It was hard to
It's hard to, yeah. We didn't have a lot of answers.
And then that is the model, is that you
about
are able to take over.
He got cornered a little bit.
Oh, yeah. 100 classes. So
Yeah.
do you bring in?
Let me set the meeting next week.
He tried to keep it on the straight going. It's not bad.
I tend to rely more on non-fiction, highly engaged non-fiction, because our slant literacy.
I have a question for you. You know, not yesterday, Wednesday at Chairs, when Deb made, I wanted to ask this the other day, I was in my office, I forgot. Deb made the reference to the 68 students that went somewhere else that would have been in English classes.
Low readability, high dyslexia is really important to so
Do you think that's just kind of a random thing, or was that a little more targeted?
Do we have,
I mean,
No, okay. All right. So, you guys are so wonderful. This is way better than when students are amazing, but you guys are so amazing, so much more so. So we tried to get you being able to match up with, and just kind of, the whole point of this was to explore, to kind of be open-minded and hear what some of the possibilities you're not engaging with are, and it gives you a chance to practice some of the things you might need to say to your partner. But I guess now you can head back to your seats, or head back to your happy place in the room, and we'll move to the next part. If you enjoyed that conversation, make sure to get the person's contact information later.
I got your digits.
Now score all your dates on a Likert scale 0 to 6.
I will say that sometimes learning communities do come out of the speed dating, because people find like there's something really cool.
For this next part, you might want to get closer to your teaching partner for the last couple pieces here, because it's going to be more partner close-up work, if you're not already. And if you need a snack or you need coffee, tea, or something like that, it's there for you. Okay. And then, David, did we have...
The survey is not in there, if that's what you're looking for.
That's
Yeah,
what
we
I
may have
was-
to go back to
thank
either the Canvas page.
All right. So talk with someone around you, or reflect or share with your teaching partner what are some of the things that stood out as you did that activity.
Duh, right?
Correct. Contemporary cinema. Yeah, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the first class I taught, was that intro to cinema class when I came here, and I was just like, oh, this is so good.
This is my second grade.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Matter of fact, I was teaching it for the first time, and I also was teaching lit and film at South Mountain for the very first time. So I was like, what a great pairing of courses for me to kind of start developing my chops a little bit. But yeah, that was fun. I can remember actually very clearly, like once that happened, and I knew that I was going to be teaching that class. And for some reason, we were going to Rocky Point that weekend, and so I was with my girlfriend watching, just sitting in our room. But like, The Graduate was on. I've always loved The Graduate, but all of a sudden I was watching it, and I was like, oh my God, this is like the greatest film ever. Like all the different, the editing, the cinematography, whatever. But I was like, oh my God, this is really like one of the best films ever. But all of a sudden I started looking at things a little differently, Yeah, that was fun. A lot of fun.
And I'll tell her to apply.
Oh, Frank. I forgot your partner left.
It's a great campus. I love
By the point of view of what they're gonna do, kind of an idea of
Well, you can certainly find those course competencies, right? Yeah. And I will say there's a link there in Canvas under the resources. There actually is a link to the CCTA, which is the Center for Curriculum, and there you can pull up her course real quickly and take a look at. She's got it. You probably saw them. It must be 22 competencies there. I mean, I remember teaching. I taught English 101 with History 109, which is Mexican American history and culture, and she had about 20 course competencies, and we just focused on 3 things. And I think we were like, and I just asked her like, what do you want? What's most important to you? She was like, the conquest, right? The Mexican American War, and then I think something related to like civil rights in the 60s. And so I just kind of built 3 papers around things she was using, but with those 3 kind of most important points for her course as a way to kind of dig deeper. But I'm sure you'll have with 22 course competencies, a lot of options. There, if you see where it
All right,
says,
so hopefully you've had a
National
chance
and
to
CDC
connect
resources with links.
a little bit
If you
on
open that at the bottom, there's a
relevant
link to
parts of the past
CCTA.
couple
You can
conversations.
find those
Just as a
SIS
quick
104
plug
competencies and start taking a look.
to Canvas, there is a Canvas shell with these various materials, so if you wanted to zoom in on the thing I'm about to pull up and read that on your phone, you can always do that. But we would like you to be able to work through some of the faculty compatibility survey questions and start thinking about some of those big picture and just, again, part of that premarital counseling, So what would... so you can go through these questions. We encourage you to do this as part of the homework to get through all 12. Like that is part of the first 12 at least, the first page. And so that is, I think, filling out the compatibility survey is one of the deliverables I think we listed for funding.
Yeah.
But for now, pick a couple of these questions and just talk through it. And I think we've got one more thing after that, if I remember, but I'll double check.
Yeah.
Well, I've already from shared with Audra, and I think that my time commitment in terms of that one credit is going to be more than one credit. But I'm willing to do that because I believe so much in a model of student success that I think we can start doing for change. So there.
I completely agree. I mean, and I just say that, and I'll go back and look, and it's not the same thing, but like when we did that back when it was, how long were you, PV? Were you there when it was triple A was all, yeah? So we were doing those kind of equivalent, with either developmental English reading or math with the 1 credit triple A, or the 3 credit if they placed in the 2 dev. And I do say that those numbers were better. I mean, granted, it
So
wasn't
you had a
the
chance to
success
talk
numbers
about
once
any of
again,
these things
because,
with
come on,
just the
take
first
a 5-week
page?
course, that's
Any of these
much
things
easier
with,
to complete than a 15 or 16 week
what's her name
course.
again?
But in terms of the retention,
Beth.
I think that was once again the real
So-
kind of. And the other thing that we've not really said, but it's also not just retention; it's the retention of the students that are not successful. Like kids getting D's and F's, you think that they would walk away and not come back.
Okay.
And the kids with
That's
D's
good.
and F's come back at a higher rate, and I just felt like that was
That's good. That
early on
yeah,
when
that
our numbers were
integrates
not
the content
super.
well.
That was
So
kind
the
of great
the
encouragement
compatibility
that
survey is
something-
also about
they
like
could
teaching
sense
style,
something
attendance
meaningful or
policies.
useful was happening there, even if the grades didn't
What do you
reflect
think
that,
is,
right? So that was one
kind
of
of
the first
the
kind of
most
indicators, like okay, something is happening here
likely
that's
pinch point as
worth,
far as
worth
like
something,
you
right?
compared to other people?
Okay. Yeah,
probably I tend to
I'm just
more,
wondering,
or
just
have a
I want to be here. It's like the best you're gonna get is
be,
I'm
okay, this is less
okay
than
with
this one.
Mm.
More of an approach where, okay,
They don't,
this
that's
is
not successful.
what I want to start doing. So in groups maybe,
Yeah.
a little bit of time, some ideas,
Mhm.
fulfillment around it.
Yeah.
Rather than, the way I remember him
You know,
in
so I
college
think it
was
was
coaching stuff he had to memorize.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe not,
Yeah, there are some of those students. There really are. You know, they've got. I don't
So
wanna say
that
they've got
might,
nowhere to go, but
so
they
one thing
have
that
nowhere
might
to
be
go, and
important for you
parents
to
are
talk
like,
with her about
Here,
is,
and there's the
what question
library,
is
and
it?
you know,
I
you're
think
here all
it's
day
this
until your parents come back and
question
get you,
12.
right? You know,
Like, what do you
there are those
imagine
students.
she's doing when she's not the focal teacher, when
yeah,
it's not her
they're
time?
quite
So when
often
you're
probably the
doing
most at-risk
activities that are a little
students,
more
right?
like that, what do you imagine
Yeah.
her doing? That might be meaningful expectation.
Sleeps in my class, and she's just tired from the moment I walk in. She's sleeping.
Oh, and you guys are
I had
doing
to have a
links too,
conversation
so,
with
but
the
yeah.
library, but I was like,
But like this is in the class. If she ends up coming into the classroom with you, what would you want her doing in a more open, facilitating?
if you're not tired, like, you probably should just stay home and sleep. You know, like, I like you being here, you're respectful, but some teachers are going to see this as being like disrespectful. And I'm like, are you okay? Are you working late? Like, I started asking her.
Okay.
But I think it's just kind of like she's just here to be here. Like, I don't know if she's being dropped off by her parents or she's kind of wandered into
There is
have
that.
that conversation with her, like, I'm not okay with this, you know, like, I'm not okay with it, and I need you to participate.
There's there's parents that like you need the student to be a full-time student or maybe a half-time student to be on the insurance. And so that I know I've encountered students that they're here because their parents have made them because keep on the insurance. Right.
Like not ones with
on what was happening in the
our
time
DRS
that
ones,
we
because
can
we
connect whatever Alexander Graham
very
Bell
special needs
did
students
up
just
until,
evolved
you know, today's
which is now getting
like, so what you probably don't realize, I went through this lecture all
all
the
these
time.
project-based learning.
I met him actually, but he's still, he retired, he's still alive. The guy who invented the cell phone is here, Motorola. And he's
And I was like,
gotta be making a
Dawn, dump them in
the
CIS
guy who
105.
invented the cell
Like,
phone
all of them
is still alive, so there's a connection.
Why is that? Why are you dumping them? Well, the principal tested it, they kept reading what we want. And we went up
Things like the
carousel.
Morse code.
So what I would say is,
So from conceptualization of ideas.
Yeah, figure out the conversation. I didn't need those expectations.
Yeah.
So I totally agree.
Well, and be thinking. The focus here is really about like policies and interaction more than content. So make sure you're taking time to think through like where might, like even if you're laid back, where are the pinch points because she might not be as relaxed or she might be more. And so some of the compatibility surveys, the stuff kind of beyond the overlap of content or the academic innovation. It's when we're talking policies. You know, do I
Not
usually
anymore.
give students 2 weeks to turn in assignments? Do they have all semester? What happens when they walk into class? Do I care about cell phones? Things like that. You know, those kind of conversations. Yeah. Okay. So be thinking on that.
Retention, lowest graduation, and I keep seeing that here at Chandler, like, 90% of the time they drop out. And even like my really smart ones, but yeah, it's interesting, and it keeps becoming an issue.
the other thing I always forgot about was like teacher recommendation, right? Oh, you should take this person. So we have a grant here, the Title IV grant, and Susanna Turowski works with, yeah. And she works with fees, she works with retention and Latin student success, Latinx student success. I sat on an interview with me before this, and I got to know them. Well, what I didn't know is Susanna is now, I just found this out, she's still turning students into my F180. And it didn't hit me, but there were a half a dozen students in that like Tuesday class that I taught this semester who were there directly because of Susanna. And then the other thing was that 2 of them had issues, personal issues that needed to be addressed. And it kind of came back to me. Like,
So I hate to interrupt really good conversations,
Noelia told me,
but we are getting lower on time.
like connection.
Did that go by really fast? Did that feel like you barely got through a question or two, or did you get How many questions? Who thinks they made it through the most number of compatibility survey questions?
No.
Who made it through at least one? Who made it through at least 2 compatibility survey questions? Anybody get through 6? What? It's a stretch. So keep looking at these. The compatibility survey, the first page or so, the first 12 or 13 questions really are focused on kind of the beyond the academic integration, but the personality, policies, those sorts of things, expectations in the classroom if you're not the focal person, and then and so you want to engage with those questions, have good meaningful questions, or good meaningful discussion on each of those. The second part of the compatibility survey we'll engage with on another day, where it kind of goes through scenarios. I was hoping you would be able to do one last activity before we go, but I realize we are at time, so I don't necessarily want to hold you longer unless you're like, I got 5 minutes. You got 5 minutes? I didn't know if people like kids to pick up or whatever. I always want to ask. So, oh, that's right. So if you have to go, you have to go. The last thing is like going back to that making it weird question. If you could try and come up like lightning round 3 possible ways to solve that for your partner, like what their weird or boring thing was. See if you can just come up with the idea and write that down. You don't have to like fully flesh it out, but if they're like, I don't like this, and you say, well, maybe it fits this thing, or I'm bored by this part of my class, like come up with just a couple ideas. So have a mini conversation about that lightning round style. See what, like, no idea is a bad idea kind of conversation. Did you get to hear possibly what hers was? I'm not sure if we made it that far. Okay, sorry. So what is something that you've heard her kind of be a little less excited about or a little more frustrated by?
So one of the normal course so that's how
And what's so what is, when you're teaching, what's one of the kind of the boring or dull parts of your content that you feel like you have to get through, but it's not as exciting? Or competencies that you should.
Then it was on the
Yeah, there's a little bit of that one there.
That's what life
Yeah.
Part of it is
Yeah. Well, it might be something like, because if she's got them writing anything, that it'll be duly reinforced because they'll have more practice at it. But she might also have a lens just from a historical frameworks perspective, like why that might matter in context. She might be able to flesh out the mindset behind a citation style in the first place.
Yeah,
Because I'm not seeing their individual writing as much.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. No, yeah.
How? Yeah. So it might be worth asking her, like, how might history make this feel more relevant and less boring, or feel less like, you know, just following the rules?
Psychology class, my teacher
Yeah.
it's actually
I saw her talking
the
about
conclusion of the paper is we highly recommend COVID-19.
something to do with the cognition.
Mm.
Kind of dry or lecture, whatever. I don't know how we can learn at that point what we saw.
Yeah.
So even though something that's on the test,
Yeah.
pinky hard stuff.
So you might ask yourself, like, how does my usual more facilitating of conversation, how might that play in? If you know that that's a lecture that kind of dips, you could offer that as a, like, you might try, does facilitating the conversation and making it more roundtable with the students, would that engage those ones that were, so that might be a way to lean in.
You're losing your credibility.
Yeah, but history,
Yeah, I feel like it's just a tedious
many people
little.
Yeah, it's, yeah.
even though it's an important thing, you guys.
Yeah. So if she's kind of going through slides on any particular thing, and it seems maybe that's something you guys can talk through. Well, and you're not exactly in the class, but maybe it's something that, so it might be offering either that, is there something that she usually, that's writing oriented that she doesn't want to cover necessarily, or is it something where you've got a pedagogical technique she could try? Yeah.
They're still not excited about what they
Yeah, they're not excited about lineage.
This is the last thing, just telling them about homework and mapping the terrain.
Yeah.
You do that. You normally do that.
Yeah, we can pull it up. We can just show it to them. No big deal. But yeah.
The others who are like average or above average, you know, part of it. Some people do it again. Not your right?
No, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
But like then you find yourself being.
I think we're very
excited.
excited. And
But
in front of him, I will walk the entire campus. We will fill this class. We will fill this class.
Okay, I was thinking too, I think we should make a flyer.
I don't know how to teach. I'm not good at like stretching your flyer.
I think that they have talked about that, and I do think that that is going to become a possibility, where there can be something in the notes that then goes to, let's say, like a one-page little thing for your class. So I do think that I've heard some conversations about that, and I do feel like it may be a possibility now. I don't know that anybody's done it yet, but I feel like being able to put a link in the notes to like a flyer, for an example. I feel like just me, like maybe they've got to that point at this point, but I don't know that we've used it. Yeah.
I know you do.
So we just want to thank you guys for being here. Thank you for having good, deep conversations. The only thing on the docket is you do have a little bit of homework, preferably before the next thing, but it's a month away. But this article, Mapping the Terrain, Integrative Learning, is kind of your homework of sorts before the next workshop. But I think David would agree. We're super thankful that you guys are interested in learning communities, that you're doing this work. It is extremely meaningful for students. If you've heard my spiel, the work we're doing with learning communities supports students' development of near transfer from far transfer, so they're getting this academic benefit. They're building this social sense of belonging, and those two powers combined are why we see such good benefits. So thank you for doing the hard work. David, do you have any final words?
Yeah, just last thing, and I know Greg just said it, but homework is really just to read this. It's much shorter than it looks like. It's really maybe 11 pages with like a foreword, and I do think that the statement we read today is also included in here. And the reason it's here is primarily that statement's from 2004. And every year that I read this thing, I keep saying, I need something new, because integrative learning is, it's still a little mushy, right? I mean, as rigorous and thoughtful as you guys are, it's some kind of subset of critical thinking. It's not quite interdisciplinary because they're introductory students that don't know a discipline well enough to be interdisciplinary. So this is just one of the more recent things that came out. It was featured at an AAC&U Summer Institute on Engaged and Integrative Learning that Chris and a couple of people were at, and so it's one of the newer things that AAC&U has put out as a follow-up to that statement. So I thought we could read that and see if it adds anything to our understanding of integrative learning as we move forward. So that's the only homework for next time. The other thing that's in there, especially for those of you going to the integrative learning curriculum retreat in Washington, there is this older essay, Assessing Integrative Learning, Insights from the Washington Center's National Project on Learning, Assessing Learning in Learning Communities. This might be worth reading before we show up in Washington, because I just feel like since it's the Washington Learning Communities Consortium, as well as the Washington Center, that this is the beginning of that work for them, really. In 2009, this is published. 2007, Vanessa Sandoval and Heather Horn were part of this project, as were Robert Sosa and me. And so this is part of the long tradition of Chandler Gilbert and learning communities. And I thought this might give some context, at least for those of us going to Washington. If the rest of you also want to read it, you're welcome to. But there's some.
It's good airplane reading.
Yeah, good airplane reading.
I got bagels. If you want to take bagels, would you all prefer if I get pizza or something next time? Since I wasn't thinking this far into the afternoon, but some sort of lunch or Costco sandwiches, or is this? Okay.
Yes.
I'll send an email with. That's the idea.
Well, no,
All right.
let's make it easy. How many people would like some lunch next time?
How many people would like lunch next time? Raise your hands. Enough?
Dean can do it.
Okay.
No, it's just you.
Yeah.
Go to the trouble and nobody wants it.
I will email about dietary restrictions.
You mean the rest of the day? I'm free till Monday morning at 8:30, I guess, Chris. What do you need?